Welcome to Mark D. Maker. My name's Mark Taylor. And today's project is going to be refining, doing a little bit of light carving, burning in the fur with a wood burner that has a rheostat on it, and painting. This is the step where this will really take on a lot of personality and charm and really start to make a difference. Now, you see all these little pencil lines on there and how they kind of wrap around the eye, come around the neck, down the arm, and they change directions as they come down the arm. That's how the fur is on a chipmunk. You use your reference material and try to indicate how in real life the fur flows. And it flows around the eyes, down the neck, right here, and then changes direction here and starts going right towards the fingers. And so you want to indicate that as with your burning and in your painting. Now here's what I use is an eye press. It's a nail. The head's been cut off. It was filed flat, and then a Dremel tool used to put a concave in it. And what I'm doing here is just putting a little graphite in there as a lubricant. It just helps it to be smooth and not make the wood rough, and it makes it very obvious where this is going to land. So I'm going to, from the side, put it over where the eye, I've carefully measured where that eye goes, put it in place, and then lean it forward because the eye is kind of like at a 45-degree angle almost. Maybe not quite so much, but it is leaning forward. The front edge where the nose is, I'm going deeper than the back of the eye. Putting a little more graphite on there. Now I'm not going in real deep. I'm giving myself the opportunity to do the other eye. If I need to carve it out and start again, I can, because I'm not going real deep. This is just giving me an indication of placement. Now what I want to do is view it from the top, from the front, and then from each side to see if it looks like it's lined up. And that looks pretty good, pretty close. Got lucky. But if I needed to, I could have taken off a small shaving of wood over each eye and started again. So now I'm going to go to my burner and start putting in the fur. I'm going to go to the back of the chipmunk where it's less noticeable. And I got it set on about 2. Now I burn very light. You can get a more realistic texture by burning lightly. If you burn too heavy, it looks too heavy and too coarse. For a little chipmunk like this that has very fine hair, the fur is little hairs that are very close together. You want to emulate that. So, a very low setting, and that looks about what I want. I'll be using very thin paints, and so I'll be able to not clog up those little burn lines. right, here I've actually turned up the heat, and this is real time, this is not sped up. I turned up the heat and I'm moving the pen faster. And when I see it starts burning a little too deep, you can just gently blow on the tip. It's just another way to regulate the heat, and you can maintain without getting too deep or coarse, because as you go deep it makes the hair look too coarse. There's my favorite beverage of choice, some iced tea in the background there, a little sweet tea. And here we're drawing in the direction of the burn lines for the tail, and I will burn the tail very hot to give it a more coarse look. Now I'm doing a little Dremel work. I'm going in on the feet and putting in the little toes. I'm using a diamond, just a really cheap diamond bit. I got like 20 diamond bits for $19. You can buy diamond bits very, very cheap. Of course, they don't last as long as if you were to you get what you pay for basically when you're buying your bits. You see, I'm still treating that Dremel just like I would a knife. I'm bracing my thumb up against the bottom of the carving for stability. Now I've gone back in with that eye press, and this time I wet it a little bit, just the tip, and press it into the wood. I wet the wood a little bit too, and press it in, and it just seems to compress smoother, and I get a rounder eye by doing that. All right, I'm down here where I do my painting, and got my chipmunk. It's all burned, and I dipped it in a sealer. The sealer that I use is called Fabulon Prime 2. Kind of hard to find, but it's a thin sealer that soaks completely into the wood. If I put my fingers on these burn lines, you can feel each and every burn, so it doesn't clog up the burn lines. That's the main objective. And then to seal the wood, I will then use a gesso. I have a Liquitex gesso on the little guy. Get them completely primed with that, and then start painting in thin washes. All right, we're ready to prime. If I haven't mentioned, Flow Aid in both my rinse jars. And some always in the paint I use. This is gouache or gesso. It's the same stuff, different name. And a lot of water. This brush transfers a lot of water. that all together, and this will be our base. So this brush is a 1/2 inch oval wash brush. It is one of my go-to brushes, my most used brush. A very important brush to use. It holds a lot of paint. If you're doing realistic or really any kind of painting, very useful brush to have. All right, so we have one coat of wash over the entire Chipmunk, and then I've gone in places that I know is going to be white, like the belly, and add just a little thicker. I'm gonna take them back over to the hair dryer, dry them again. Probably do these white areas at least one more time, and we'll be back and mix up some color. Okay, I got a little raw sienna here. Some raw sienna and white. And that looks like this color here, the majority of the side of the little chipmunk. So we're going to give that a try. I actually want a softer bristle brush than this. It's a little bit stiff. Always wet your brush before you stick it in any kind of paint, and that helps get water up in here instead of paint. And I think that's the problem with this particular brush. I can actually see some paint up in here, and it causes the bristles to be difficult to work with. So this is very thinned out paint, and we're just going to be putting washes on. That looks pretty close. I'll give that a try. No, I'm also brushing in the direction of the burn lines. If you go against them, they tend to collect too much paint. The paint doesn't flow as smoothly. So by keeping with the direction of the burn lines, it's like keeping with the grain of the wood in a sense. You just get a better result. Now this paint job, I would say overall probably took about 2 hours. I would do a part, I would go to the hair dryer, I would take a break, have lunch, and in the process, the paint does start to, the water starts to evaporate out of it. And it's important to remember to add water to it when you come back after a break or something like that. Always rinse out your brushes if you're going to leave them for more than just a few minutes. If you're painting for more than 30 minutes, wash out your brushes really good and then continue. Here I'm putting a nice thin layer on the tail. And I'll go back and blend in some darks and follow my reference material.
Shiny black. And I'll grab a cooperative brush here. Let's see what color we're looking at. Definitely dark brown. Burnt umber.
All right, here we're just using burnt umber with that's thinned out with a little water and just a couple drops of Flow Aid. And we're putting in dark colors. And that's really making a difference. You can there's a certain point to where when you start to add paint to what you're doing, a carving or a painting, that it really starts to feel like what you're trying to do, what you're trying to make is finally coming through. And yeah, these darks really start to make them look like a chipmunk. Now what I'm doing here is going for a very subtle brownish color, and I could have done this with an airbrush, but by using light washes you can accomplish almost the same effect. I'm going in, stippling a little bit into an area that I already wet around the perimeter with water, and you get this certain effect with that. You can see a very soft blended effect. I would say the most important thing to learn to paint is to learn to play with your paints. Learn to experiment, try things. If something went wrong in my painting right now, I could rinse it off and start again. And if that didn't work, I could use the gesso, cover it completely, and start again. So the key is experiment. Learn to play. You'll learn so much by just doing and not being so nervous about it. All right, back from the hairdryer. This white has the water in it has evaporated and it's a little thicker now. And I will go back in with this white stripe. I'm putting it in with the, because this is fur, putting it in with the grain in which it was burned. Slightly overlapping the darker brown, just slightly here and there, gives it the more fur-like appearance. So there's those white stripes. And I'll do little touches around the ear. Even though not seen here, it does give a little cute factor to it. Alright, so I've been painting on this little guy for a while now. And from my own sanity, I'm ready to be finished with him. But I do want to do one final touch. And that is, they'll often have little bits of white on the outer perimeter of their tails. And so I'm kind of going to do a dry brush technique. Real gentle, just catching the edges. And every chipmunk that I saw was a little bit different. Constantly referring to reference material as I paint. Using the side of the brush, dry brush technique. See how all those burn marks, they just pop with that white paint on them. Looks pretty good. A little bit on the upper edge so I can see it from the front. Pulls your eye back there. And I think we're gonna call that one done. Thanks for watching the video. Hopefully it was helpful. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.